Hello, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Park podcast. My name is Patrick Clark, and today I will be talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. The beginning of baseball in the United States dates back to the 1830s, where it is said to have started in Cooperstown, New York. From 1830 to 2018, the United States has been involved in over 20 wars, each affecting the country differently, from the creation of wartime jobs to splitting families apart through the draft. One aspect that is often overlooked is the war's effect on the national pastime, baseball. World War II started in September 1939 and ended in September of 1945, but the United States did not get involved until after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. During the years 1940 to 1946, the United States drafted over 10 million eligible males between the age of 21 and 45, which is 5 times more than the amount of men drafted during the Vietnam War. Of these 10 million males, over 500 MLB players served, and over 4,000 minor league players served in World War II, including players like Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, and Mickey Owen. Of the many organizations that were impacted by World War II, one team that I would like to take a deeper look into is the Philadelphia Phillies organization during the years of 1939 to 1950. Starting in the year 1939, the Philadelphia Phillies were coming off another red-hot season, finishing 8th out of 8 teams. Their third last-place finish in the last 5 years, and the future was looking relatively the same. During the 4-year period from 1939 to 1942, the Phillies finished in last place in the National League every year, but by far their worst year was the 1942 season. During the season, the Phillies scraped together a meager 394 runs, 1,174 hits, and only 44 home runs, while posting a 42 and 109 record. Each of these stats were well below their average for the 4 years of 485 runs, 1,254 hits, and 58 home runs. The 1942 season was led by NL All-Star left fielder Danny Litweiler and first baseman Nick Etten, who finished 28th in the MVP voting. Litweiler, who managed a .271 batting average and a .700 OPS, also added 9 home runs during the regular season, while Nick Etten, who had a .264 batting average and a .732 OPS, also added a solid 8 home runs during the regular year. Combined, these two players accounted for 38% of their team's home runs and 24% of their team's total runs. These two players seemed like a promising foundation for the Philadelphia's organization to build off of, but unfortunately they were both traded away the following year. On the other side of the baseball world, in the American League, the Boston Red Sox just tapped into the goldmine of baseball talent that was future Hall of Famer Ted Williams, who posted all-star numbers since his first at-bat in 1939 and continued to do so until the 1943 season when he left baseball to join the military effort in World War II. Hoping to improve from the previous years of finishing in the gutters, the 1943 spring training Phillies took a new approach to the offseason. In the spring of 1943, every team in the MLB was affected when it came to travel. Due to the United States' recent involvement in World War II, the government applied many travel bans on flights that prevented northern teams from flying south for spring training. Due to this, teams like the Phillies were forced to use second-rate facilities like indoor basketball courts that were not equipped to host MLB teams. Dan Daniel, a reporter from the New York World Telegram, wrote, "There is no Florida sun, there are no bathing beauties, there are fewer stakes, and it's tougher to get up a perspiration. There are more aches and muscles that never hurt before, squawks against calisthenics. There are dull hours, but there are good beds and long nights which to rest in them." Baseball is meant to be played outside in the warm weather, and the North simply was not warm enough to play the game the way it was supposed to be. Many professional teams attempted to stay at local colleges for spring training, but were often turned away due to the military taking over the campus for basic training. In the end, the Phillies settled on Hershey, Pennsylvania in mid-February. In addition to new facilities, the Phillies organization also hired a new owner, William D. Cox, new manager, Bucky Harris, and new trainer, Harold Anson Bruce. Manager Bucky Harris was determined to break the streak of last-place finishes and 100-plus losses a year the Phillies have recently suffered. He implemented new training techniques that followed his commando-type training, saying, "I want the team to run in the morning and in the afternoon, and to come down to the start of the season ready to go, top speed." Trainer Harold Anson Bruce, who was a well-known manager for the American Olympic track team, had the team take part in rigorous calisthenics every day, as well as new recovery techniques that included pitchers taking part in light workouts the day after pitching to help with soreness. Danny Litweiler said, "Bruce was a good man. Our ball club was in well shape. We were probably in as good a shape as any team as far as conditioning is concerned. The main thing was run, run, run." Even though most coaches in the majors did not have many concerns other than baseball, the players had other things on their mind. During World War II, there were a total of 10 million men drafted between the ages of 21 and 45. In the 1940 season, the Phillies' first player to be drafted was Hugh Macaulay on March 8, 1941. In the 1942 season, 7 more players enlisted or were drafted, and in 1943, 11 more players entered the military. The Phillies suffered so many losses to the war that it was suggested that at the National League meeting that each club sells one player to the Phillies at a low price, to hopefully prevent the Phillies from winning fewer than 40 games in the 1943 season. Dodgers president Branch Rickey had other ideas, shouting, "To hell with that! Baseball is no place for charity." Just in the spring of 1943, the Phillies lost first baseman Eddie Murphy, catcher Joe Holden, and George Hennessy to either military service or wartime jobs. The other idea the Phillies organization had to fill roster spots was to hold an open tryout on March 1, 1943. As promising as this sounded for the Phillies, only 3 players showed up: a sandlotter, a minor leaguer, and a one-eyed player from Connecticut. The overall goal of the 1943 season was to just have enough players to fill the available jerseys. Some of the highlight players of that year included men classified 4F, not certified for service, like nearsighted pitcher Johnny Specs Pagani, and Babe Dahlgren, who was hit in the head by a pitch when he was a child and would frequently experience blackouts during the games. Even though the 1943 spring training seemed promising for the Phillies, manager Bucky Harris was eventually fired after 92 games, going 39-53, and owner William Cox was eventually banned from baseball for gambling on his own team. Despite much of their talent being stripped away due to the war, the stretch of years from 1943 to 1946 was much more successful than the years before, 1946 being the highlight season of 69 wins and 85 losses, finishing in a top 5 spot for the first time in close to 20 years. During this year, the Phillies averaged close to 554 runs, 1,320 hits, and 64 home runs, all of which drastically increased from the 1939 to 1942 seasons. This surge of performance was led by rookie all-star Del Ennis, who put together a .313 batting average, 70 runs, and 17 home runs, and an OPS of .849. Behind him came outfielder Johnny Warstack, who batted .281, added 73 runs and 6 home runs, while also holding an OPS of .749. Also, the number of people supporting the Phillies increased, even during wartime. The attendance at Shibe Park reached over 1.2 million, the highest it would reach until the 1950 season. As the war winded down, many baseball fans rejoiced as their hometown heroes returned from the war to continue their baseball careers. One all-time legend, Ted Williams, returned from war as a hero. Although many fans may have doubted if Ted could return to baseball, leaving the same impact as before, Ted Williams quickly shut everyone up, winning 2 MVP awards in his first 4 seasons back, and placed 2nd and 3rd in the MVP race the other 2 years. He also posted career highs in home runs, RBIs, and runs. Ted's career went on until 1960, a 19-year-long career, where he continually proved to be one of the best hitters in baseball. But all good things must come to an end. And what does this mean for Red Sox fans? John Updike captures the emotions of Ted Williams' career and last season in his story, Hub Fans Bid Kid Adieu. He talks about how even fans could realize Ted's demeanor was different than other players, saying, "This man, you realize," and here, perhaps, was the difference, greater than the difference in gifts, really intended to hit the ball. The fans could sense the fear off the pitcher when Ted came up to the plate. He was different than other hitters. He had a cool confidence, and he knew he could end his career the way he wanted to. In his last at-bat, John Updike writes, We all stood, all of us, stood and applauded. Just applause. No calling, no whistling, just an ocean of handclaps, minute after minute, burst after burst, crowding and running together in continuous succession, like the pushes of surf at the edge of the sand. There was no boo in it. And without surprise, Ted delivered again, knocking the ball over the wall so effortlessly, like before. After rounding the bases, Ted headed back into the dugout where he had countless times before, taking his seat, ignoring the eruption of the crowds and the "We want Ted" chants. Players like Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, and Warren Spahn truly serve as American hero for baseball fans. To take time away from their careers to serve in the military, and then to come back and play the national pastime and not skip a beat, makes the hard times in life easier knowing that MLB players are people too who have to serve the country they love. With the return of players from war and the development of players who filled in, the Phillies were developing into a well-rounded team. From the years 1947 to 1950, the Phillies re-established their footing in the National League, winning 81 and 91 games in the years 1949 and 1950, putting them in third place and first place respectively. In addition to the 91 win season in 1950, the Phillies earned a shot to win the World Series, but unfortunately lost the series 4-0. But the bright side of the season was the Phillies' all-around improved statistics. Outfielder Del Ennis again led the team alongside catcher Andy Semenick, who combined for 55 home runs and 147 runs. During the 1950 season, the team scored a whopping 722 runs, over 230 more than their average for the years 1939 to 1942. The Phillies also had 1,440 hits and an impressive 125 home runs on the season. Manager Eddie Sawyer, who was only in his second full season with the Phillies, managed to take the Phillies to their first World Series since 1915. Although it seemed like his career started off with a bang, it almost came to a halt before it all started. In June of 1949, while at a hotel in Chicago, first baseman Eddie Walkes was shot by a deranged woman and forced to sit out most of the 1949 season. Only playing 54 games, Eddie was still voted as an All-Star. But with manager Eddie Sawyer and his laissez-faire approach to managing a team, he was able to develop a strong bond with the team that led them to their first 1950s World Series run. Well, that's all for today's edition of Out of the Park podcast. My name is Patrick Clark, and I hope you have a great day.